Good afternoon and welcome. We know that it is a time for a coffee, but thank you very much for coming nevertheless. It is early in the afternoon, and we have to be quick because if I remember correctly, at 3 p.m. there will be another presentation by Asogeme. So Loredano, you're not going to talk? Oh, never mind. Anyway, let's start without further ado. Thank you very much again. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. We have already hinted to this yesterday. These are the new export routes. We know that we're going through a period of uncertainty. That was the buzzword yesterday. The only thing that is certain is that it is an uncertain moment. And the Club Degli Orafi decided to ask our members, as well as all companies in this industry, how they are going to react, which is their strategic reaction to this uncertainty. And the questionnaire we have administered has provided us with a way to understand how companies are reacting to the present difficulties and also to further deepen the tools that the Italian government, I'm talking of ICE, the Italian Foreign Trade Agency, such as Siemens, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the tools that these institutions are providing companies with. Yesterday, Mr. Augusto Augurelli, our past president and managing director of our Centro Studi, told us entrepreneurs are lonely, and I reacted by saying they feel lonely, but they're not lonely because there is a supportive network with these four important associations together, the Ministry of Made in Italy and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Sara Giusti, Senior Economist of the Research Department of Intesa Sanpaolo. I hope I mentioned your qualification correctly. So she is the lady of the figures. She processes all the data and provides us with all the data that are fundamental to all companies in this industry, so that we can take stock of the present situation based on the most recent data available. Sara, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Laura. So we're going to focus on the process of internationalization of the companies in this industry. And before going into the detail of the different markets and of the evolution that we have assessed, we would like to talk about the role of Italy on the European scenario. You can see that in 2024 a peak was achieved, and later on we will see why, but the position of Italy amongst the UE countries is significant. So we're talking about more than 50% of export coming from the Italian manufacturing industry. So our role in this industry has grown and has increased in value. And this is very important also if you widen the scope and include also exporting countries such as Switzerland and Turkey. In 2024, the Italian export exceeded also the export of these two markets. And this was possible thanks to a significant growth, an average annual growth of 19%. From 19 to 24, greater than Switzerland and Turkey, as well as France. You can see that Ireland shows an interesting situation, but Ireland is not a manufacturing company. It is a manufacturing country. It is a country that distributes goods predominantly coming from Italy. So 2024 has been particularly positive, but of course we also have to investigate the relevant flows towards Turkey, which are the result of import laws imposed by the Turkish government that have brought to an increased demand of lower added value goods. On the right, we can see the mean annual growth compared to the different destinations, and we can see that our industry has been able to be competitive also in the Arabic countries with a plus 8% and the plus 12% growth towards the United States. So a good growth towards several destinations. And we've actually seen a minor reduction in diversification. Well, right now, in this particular moment, this is a very important topic. Here you can see an index that represents a diversification of the outlet markets. The higher the index, the closer it is to 1, the greater the number of markets reached. So you can see, in particular in 2019, that this is a process that our company have been following in time, because we have one of the highest indexes. It has slightly decreased also because of the Turkish effect, but at the same time, it tells us about an opportunity, about a possibility, which is that of increasing diversification as a strategy for companies in reaction to the present competitive situation. We have heard this morning. It is very important to understand how demand is evolving in the different markets. What about the results of 2025? Let's comment the Italian export in the first 5 months. The overall data shows that we still have to come to terms with the Turkish effect, so we have to exclude the Turkish effect. That would lead to a minus 18%. But Turkey excluded, we have a growth by 2% in terms of value of export and stability in quantity and volumes. So in the light and the context we heard about yesterday, this data shows that our competitiveness is holding on the international scenario. We have also represented monthly data as far as Turkey is concerned, because they show how throughout the different months since 2024 the situation has evolved. It is true, figures are going down, but we are still at a much higher level compared to the value prior to 2024. Here we have data pertaining to the first quarter only, where I'm talking about the provincial data. And we can see that in the different provinces we have different situations. Arezzo, for instance, which is significantly linked to Turkey, is suffering from the situation in the first quarter 2025. But once again, if we exclude Turkey, we can see that the growth amounts to 5%. Conversely, Vicenza is going in the opposite direction in the first quarter. Alessandria and Valencia with a drop in exports in the first quarter. We would like to propose the refocusing on the United States, specifically because of their significance for this industry and also because of the evolution of the trade policies. So we like this long-term graph starting from 2000 all the way to the first semester 2025. These are the data coming from the US. These are US imports of gold jewelry. And this graph also tells us about the repositioning of the gold jewelry industry on the American market. We're also talking about a repositioning in terms of the quality of our offer. We can say that we're ranking second or third against France. In the first semester 2025, 13% of the American imports of gold jewelry was coming from Italy, with France with a share of 16%, 24% for India. And it would be interesting to further deepen into the main value per unit of these imports. That will give us a better idea of the type of product we're talking about. So U.S. imports show a reduction by 6.8%. These are import data referring to the U.S. And France has been able to increase their export to the U.S. But it is very important to focus on the time frame. We can see that in the first part of the year, we have probably anticipated deliveries, or deliveries have been anticipated because of the existing uncertainty. In the second half of the year, starting from April, there has been a significant reduction in import towards the United States following the Liberation Day. And it is very interesting to see also the relationship with the foreign exchange rate, another element that makes the competitive context even more complex. We're talking about the United States, but as a matter of fact, there are 5 states that actually make up the American market. These 5 states have a different type of demand. These are states where we have a high spending demand, or like in the case of Texas, related to the presence of distributors. And it is very interesting to observe the trend of import towards the different states. And on the right, you can see the weight of the Italian production. So our third position is confirmed in the 5 main states. So we always rank amongst the first 3 exporters to the US. Let's have a look at the different provinces and the weight of the United States for the different provinces. The situation is pretty heterogeneous. On the right, you can see Turin, where import and export towards the United States makes more than 1/5 of the total. And the first quarter data, and unfortunately we only have data up to the end of the first quarter, shows the situation, and Vicenza is going the opposite direction than the other districts such as Arezzo and Valenza. And I would like to conclude with this slide that is a stimulus representation for our following debate. Our colleagues focusing on internationalization processes have provided us with the data that you can see here. These are the people who support our customers, the enterprises, to be active internationally. December 2024, we asked, towards which countries are you directing your export? Gulf countries, US, India. And the very same question was asked in June. And we can see that the United States have moved to the very last place. So it is very interesting to see that we still have the Gulf countries and India ranking number 1 and number 2, followed by Western Europe. So proximity markets that had not been viewed as a significant exporting markets are now ranking 3rd. So maybe this proves the efficacy or inefficacy of the American trade policies. Thank you very much, Sara.
Veramente molto interessante.
This is a very interesting graph showing quite clearly, very clearly. Please leave it on. I'd like to comment on this graph. So there's dubious efficacy of the actions undertaken, but at the same time, this slide tells us something more. The orange part of the graph tells us that these are areas that would like, or countries that would like to enter the market. So when we gave a questionnaire to the companies, to the enterprises participating to this study in June and July, we asked our members, as well as other companies in the sector, whether they were exporters. Not all of the Italian gold manufacturing industries do export nowadays, and if they were interested in doing so, and if they would like to do it on their own, or if they would need some sort of a support from us. So, and if they were knowledgeable of the state aid that we would provide, that would be provided to them. There's not just the United States there are 195 states in the world, so those who export already may think of diversifying or approach new markets, which isn't easy. It is not as easy as continuing business as usual on the markets where they're already present, but they can, of course, differentiate their businesses. And Ms. Squarcialupi, Vice President of Federorafi, with delegated to sustainability and member of the board of Cinema, so is an entrepreneur representing all of the different facets of the sector. Because Cristina, you have your own production, you produce on third parties account, you have a retail network, you also deal with wholesalers, so you know very many facets of these markets. Social responsibility, ESG, is also something you see on your everyday business. So what can you tell us about these realities? You will tell us what the companies and enterprises have replied to all of these questions, but maybe your perception concerning the sentiment of businesses that you can observe on a daily basis representing the Italian system. So starting yesterday, when we opened the doors of Vicenza Oro, we heard the word uncertainty being spoken very, very frequently, and it's been with us for a long time, from the moment when we knew even much less, but we're still very dubious, where we still don't know how operators could behave, surely vis-à-vis the United States, but also in respect with the rest of the world, with so many uncertainties that also have repercussions on the United Arab Emirates and elsewhere. And on top of this, we have the issue of Turkey. We know that Turkey, for those of you who already know the market, knew how the situation would evolve, but it was a positive market back then. So then at a certain point, Turkey imposed a further taxation on jewelry, which has, blocked us. It was the perfect storm. I don't want to be pessimistic at all, because I believe that Italian entrepreneurs used to, pull up their sleeves and do this so-called reshuffling, how I like to call it, so that they can start a new game afresh. So some people say that this is a normal up and down cycle, and this is a moment of uncertainty. I don't want to call it a bearish market, but I believe that the companies still strongly believe in the future evolutions that we've seen from the questionnaire that we have given to the businesses. So entrepreneurs would like to continue to invest, and they would like to be accompanied in that respect. And I would like to thank Masini to be with us, because many people do not know how many tools have been made available by the government, and especially small businesses are not aware of all these measures. So this is a moment where we have to join forces and work towards one and the same objective, so that we can get out of this uncertainty. Thank you very much. So what are the companies telling us? Well, first of all, I would like to say that we have, created this questionnaire that we have distributed to entrepreneurs in production as well as in the trade. We had 50% small and medium-sized and 50% medium to large-sized companies. So the first question was whether those companies were present on the international markets. And when we asked the question of the tools for serving international markets, as you can see, export is the very first thing that comes to my mind. Then e-commerce and more technological things come into play. But we know very much, we know precisely that these are not these are only indirect methods. We can sell abroad from home. We don't have to go to those markets. And then all of the interviewees are active on the international market. Therefore, that's 78% is basically made of big companies. E-commerce is more widespread in micro to small-sized businesses because they're less structured to go to those markets. We've also seen that agents, networks, and stores, as well as joint ventures, are being activated with local partners. Of course, these answers have been provided in the main by the large-sized companies. As you can see, micro to small sized companies are still moving ahead through the digital channels. When asking the question of whether they were considering opening up new activities, we observed that medium to large-sized companies were quite interested into that, and in fact, 40% of medium to large-sized companies are interested in considering foreign activities, foreign activities. This is a sample of companies that is already abroad, which means that they're already there and are considering new businesses and new opportunities abroad. And as you can see, also micro and small sized companies are interested into this new approach because in moments of uncertainty, people tend not to abandon internationalization. 22% of small companies tells us that that's a very interesting initiative. The approach that companies prefer is the direct management from Italy. So on the right-hand side of the responses we obtained, we see this medium to large-sized companies prefer a direct, complete management from Italy, whereas the smallest ones, the micro, small businesses, turn to distributors or local agents for the purpose of expanding there. And the same applies to joint ventures for medium to large-sized companies. We also asked which countries would be more interesting, more appealing abroad, and Western Europe seems to have become very interesting, very attractive, the United States ranking second, and then the rest of the countries follow. Amongst the Western European countries, and this was an open-ended question, we heard about France, Germany, UK, Switzerland, Spain, and Austria, which means that proximity countries, the neighboring countries, are more interesting, more appealing. Federorafi and the International Trade Agency have conducted this interview. In the four bigger states for our sector in Europe have practically reconfirmed their interest in this new interest in made in Italy jewels, especially the UK showed this trend, if I'm not mistaken. Here is the most important question. So whether companies, the question was, would your company be interested in taking advantage of the tools and support provided by the Italian government for internationalization? If you go to the bottom right part, 30% of the micro small companies are not aware at all of the existence of such instruments, which means that the government and the associations in our business sector should consider providing more information to the businesses on these topics so that they can be taken or accompanied to foreign markets. And as you can see, that 30% in black, and then 40 plus 10 micro, small size businesses that seem to be interested. So we also have to work hard. Matteo Masini, I'm talking to you in this respect. So what are the needs of businesses? What are services that could help internationalization? There's not a specific need expressed by companies. The search for clients and partners is important, but also trade fairs and fair participation, which is something that almost everybody mentions, small, micro and medium and large companies. But of course, there's issues with financing as on top of strategic market analysis. Small businesses prefer to have a tax or legal support or consulting services being provided to them, which shows that there is a lot of the different needs out there for our category as a whole. For our businesses, so we don't want to leave entrepreneurs alone. We don't want to leave them on their own. And here is a question concerning business partners. So who could be the business partner that could facilitate internationalizations? First of all, clients were mentioned. So customers, clients are needed in order to develop internationalization. Ranking second public institutions, and therefore this goes back to the question, to the issue we mentioned earlier. So we wanted to understand what clients could be considered. Many foreign clients are distributors, and they, in their turn, try to act on their own clients. So maybe that is the answer that we expected. Would you like to comment on this? Well, this doesn't prove that the company is 100% independent. Of course, clients are the best resource, but they could try to, obtain results that interest to them solely. But, having a direct retail network abroad is something that big-size companies normally have. The jewelry or the gold industry in Italy normally turns to foreign distributors that become a trade union between production and final clients and the retail companies. So this is the way I would interpret this. Yes, we were very curious to drill down into it. This is my point of view, and as you can see, public institutions seem to be very important in this respect. Slightly less so consultants and banks and so on, but still we need them and we like to have them on our side. Response to tariffs, searching for new clients on different markets. That was the way in which our companies replied. So anticipating deliveries, this was probably a very time-based response that then led to the next stage. But I believe that the third line is important. Limited impact thanks to production quality. So beautiful, well done, well conceived, well crafted. And in fact, this reflects the Italian productions do have a plus to offer to the clients, and this is also acknowledged by other countries. Luigi Marostico yesterday told us, from Carizia, told us that they work almost 100% with the United States, and I have retained my prices. If they want their product, I cannot absorb the 15% tariff that has been imposed on us. Is this going to pay out? Yeah, I think so. I think he's right to think so. And then our last question. probably this was asked to those who work in the retail business. We asked whether there was a possibility of attracting foreign tourists to one's own retail store. So there is an interest in this. If you take a look at the total, it's 39%. So considering the countries of origin, for example, high-spending tourists come from the United States and from the Middle East. Laura, you asked before to draw conclusions, but I think it's very clear indeed after watching these slides, after watching these presentations. It's clear that the market is alive and kicking. It is clear that the market is evolving and is reacting as it should. So Sara's last slide with the United States ranking last is something I like very much. It seems to me to be something that clearly shows how Italian companies are performing. You know, the United States are close to us now, but there are so many other countries in this world that we can do business with. So maybe we have not evaluated this before, but now, thanks to the support we receive from the government, we might be in a position of expanding our production and be successful there. Thank you very much, Cristina. Thank you very, very much. I think we can go into the details. We all have enormous expectations. We know that the government has set itself very ambitious objectives. And I'm quoting Matteo Masini from talking about consumer goods, fashion, people, cultural industries, dwellings or residents are some of the sectors that were considered. We met in the past in the field of new technologies. I think you've been in this sector for 25 years. Is this right? So we were so young back then.
Anche il mondo.
So you have traveled the world being vice director in Moscow, and then you've been also in other headquarters, and you've always supported companies. So we know that from 624 billion export, the target has become 700 billion in 2027. A very ambitious target, but we know that you have got ready to achieve this target. So if you want, we would all like to know a little bit better what the main four agencies do, ICE, such as Siemens and GDP. And I would like to tell you the following. In my experience, you know that I've worked with you for a long time, but we tend to create a little bit of confusion regarding foreign credit insurance. So maybe you want to spend a few words on behalf of SACE, and you can tell us what ICE does and what companies can ask you to do. Of course, thank you. Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you very much for all these data, which are fundamental for us, because to be able to provide a support to companies and to provide services to companies, we need to know in detail what they see and how they feel. So the customer as a source of knowledge, I believe that this is something really important. Working abroad and comparing our companies with other companies, well, we have realized that Italian companies have an enormous capability of learning from customers. So they're able to provide much more than just a product, because they can learn from the customer. And this does not always happen in the other countries. There are competitors. I mean, apart from jewelry, our European neighbors are probably the closest benchmark we have. And they have they do not have a bottom-up type of approach, but a top-to-bottom approach. So back to the feeling that entrepreneurs have of being alone. I mean, they need to exploit all the opportunities and all the data to survive on these markets. And when I was getting ready for this presentation, this is the kind of insight that I would like to have confirmed by your data. Anyway, back to our specific topic today. All in all, notwithstanding the present uncertainty regarding governmental support policies to promote internationalization, we're actually moving towards a consolidation. 5 years ago, there was a big turnaround. Since 2000, the main focus of our agencies has shifted. We have redefined the mode with which the Italian system approaches entrepreneurs. This is now based on internationalization in geographic terms, in terms of relationship with other countries, considering the specificities of other countries. And this change in time, throughout the years, has actually moved towards a consolidation. This does not mean that we no longer have the marked industrial policy measures of internationalization as we used to know them in the past. There are tools that are still in use. They're still in the competence of the ministry dedicated to the industrial policy. That does no longer have facilities for internationalization, but nevertheless can provide tools that can be interesting for companies aiming at internationalizing. So back to the consolidated situation. Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs leads the whole system and can monitor and supervise the other three agencies. There is a structural cooperation with GDP. And apart from building a system of relationships that has led to a unification of all these policies under one single leadership, governance forms are changing, and the way how we relate to the users is changing as well. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as Minister Tajani announced a short time ago, is restructuring internally with a clear-cut separation of political versus economic diplomacy with two general secretaries. So an activity which historically had not been a competence of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, i.e. supporting companies and favoring international trade, I mean, with the exception of large projects. But this is now becoming a substantial element in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So starting from 2026, this will be highly specific. Now, talking about the individual agencies, like Laura was mentioning before, these agencies are distinct entities with different tasks, different distinct competencies. And the number one thing that everybody should know pertains to the type of tools that are provided. The ICE is an operational agency. The budget and resources available are limited compared to the other two agencies. Conversely, the operational resources of ICE are much more significant. They can have a direct contact with small and medium enterprises, and they have a foreign network The other agencies are also developing their foreign networks, but they will never be as big as the ICE network. Conversely, SAT and Siemens are two companies making use of financial tools and instruments. So they have a much bigger volume. Their annual allocation is much bigger than ICE because the Siemens financial instrument, joint venture participations, incentivized credit, and other traditional and modern measures, they require a different kind of approach, and they also have some limits, of course, compared to what we do. ICE has a direct relationship with small and medium enterprises because it is on the same level. Our offices in the different foreign markets are reference points for entrepreneurs to sort out technical and operational issues. There is no need to present documents with the exception of your VAT number. You do not need to present your balance sheet or an internalization plan. They can just call you or send you an email. Exactly, that's a typical approach to ICE. So you can also walk in to our offices abroad. Of course, we're talking about small offices where there is not always the possibility of having an appointment. But if you introduce yourself sending an email, and if you state your objectives and what you want to do on that given market, which is your interest, which type of activities you want to carry out, then you just send your email containing all this data. And usually there is a telephone conversation. And through this conversation, we identify the needs, for instance, the search for a partner. This is a classical service that the ICE can provide. I can remember that when I used to work abroad, this was the most common request, because without any particular formality, the company can present itself, and the company must be able to present itself in an appropriate way with the suitable material, data, and so on and so forth. So the ICE, based on that documentation, without the company having to invest or spend any time, so the ICE identifies the possible counterparts that might be interesting for this company. Then, with an institutional support to reduce failure possibilities, because obviously today we're bombarded with different offers and it is difficult to have a filter. For a foreign operator, the corporate presentation is sent through the Italian embassy, because we are integrated with the Italian embassies abroad, and the Italian embassy is going to introduce the Italian company interested in a specific proposal. So it is actually possible to contact ICE, which is something similar to a commercial representative in the country, through the Italian embassy. And this kind of service, in the end, produces a report sent to the company with the profile of all the companies that have been contacted, with their reactions. This is pretty standardized, of course, because we have a price range, a market range, type of product, product technology, sustainability, sourcing. All these data are provided to characterize the product, and based on this first application, the company already has the possibility of choosing and orienting its future investments in a much easier way. So that's the type of service we provide most frequently. A provocatory question. How many thousands of euros does this service cost? 300,000 billion? No, of course. One ticket. ICE is not a consultancy company. It is a governmental body. Therefore, when these services imply external costs, then if you have to pay for an interpreter, for a translator, if you need to rent a meeting room, then of course ICE will sustain the cost and then invoice this to the company. But if you're just using the resources of the office, who are local individuals who were born in the country where the office has been opened, well, this kind of service is almost free of cost, because it may cost a few hundreds or a little more than 1,000 euro. It is not a market price service. It is a service provided by a public body funded by taxpayers that provide services to the Italian system. So it is not just the individual company benefiting from the service, but this is positive also in general terms, because it enhances the Italian presence on that foreign market, which is the ultimate target of the agency and of the Italian state. So basic services are free of cost. Of course, they have a limited added value, because there are many sources of information, and the fact that our officers still provide this service is just a heritage of the past, of the time when having information, also name of the company and address, was a difficult task. But it is no longer like that. We offer this kind of services, but we know that that is not the real usefulness of our network. The real usefulness resides in the fact that we have a polling service. So we investigate the potential of the product and of the possible supply, and we can also give indications regarding a possible improvement to be more effective on that given market, without the company having to invite counterparts to Italy, taking them for a visit to the company. I mean, this is done at a later stage. First, partners are searched. Once they have been identified, you can also take advantage of our service for organizing the visit of foreign companies to Italy. So those partners that might be interested in a consolidation of the relationship will be invited to visit the company in Italy. Of course, the travel costs will be paid for by the company, the Italian company, but all the logistics and all the coordination can be provided by ICE. So that's the main point. But of course, there are 1,000 different possible declinations of this service. The counterparts are the very same people who are invited at Vicenza Oro. They are part of the incoming flow and they visit the fair. So there are many different opportunities to meet, maybe less customized, but with a wider scope. Talking about promotional activities, there are resources that are allocated every year in the accounts of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, funds that are then provided to us to organize the incoming of dozens or hundreds of visitors at fairs like this one. These operators come from different countries. They've been pre-selected. They come and visit the fair. They come and visit the booths. And this can lead to relevant relationships. In some cases, our local officer working, let's say, in the Houston ICE office, who's competent for jewelry, or the one responsible for Sweden. So the local officer usually chaperones a delegation and can therefore also improve their own technical knowledge of the industry, of the Italian companies, promoting the contact between foreign potential partners and Italian companies. Of course, this is not a customized service, but it is free of cost. We just take the delegations to the fair, not to specific companies. However, fairs like this one are important partners for us, and there is a lot of work in terms of matching and logistics that allow us to maximize the result. Having a network abroad can also be exploited in many other ways. It is possible to organize local visits, visiting the local partners. When we organized the Italian pavilion in the field of promotion, well, in this industry, for instance, we are present in Hong Kong and Las Vegas with these large fairs with more than 100 Italian companies in the Italian hall. So those are markets where things are not so easy. But in other cases, this is combined with guided visits before or after the fair. Say, if retail is a focus, then we visit specific department stores, shopping malls, to get to know the market also outside the fair, with the support of our office. A facility of the Italian state that is the interface on site where Italian is spoken. In the Asian countries, this is not so widespread, but anyhow, the person responsible in the office is a person who speaks Italian and is used to working with Italian companies. With the task, sorry, I have the task to tell you, to summarize, because the time is fleeting. Just a few words on SACE. Well, what I can tell you about SACE is a little bit more superficial, because we're parallel bodies, but we're not integrated. And also because SACE is changing. Historically, SACE has always managed credit insurance. SACE is a department of the trade commerce institution, and it has become an independent financial company. They have launched a deep strategy, which has the purpose of supporting all what we actually do through the monitoring and the knowledge of the markets to support the foreign customers, with the possibility of providing tools when the Italian company has already identified the partner with the support of ICE, and they want to present a particularly appealing offer also in terms of a credit instrument. This was launched a couple of years ago. It was limited to some countries. We used to work with them until a few years ago at a project which they are trying to extend to other countries. So pilot experiments have been made in India and South Africa. And they were actually developing a network. When I was in Moscow, we actually opened such an office within the ICE in Moscow with 2 officials, highly qualified officials, because such as activities are different, more similar to those of a bank. We provide a marketing profiling. SACE and CMEST have a profile which is more similar to that of a bank. You need to be able to interpret the accounts, to make specific calculations in terms of funding. These are all complementary instruments. They do not exclude each other. And the big problem of SACE has always been the fact that it focuses only on medium to high volume operations. That's why we do not work very much together, because we have a different target. We are dedicated to small enterprises, and we have a direct interface. SACE is a different kind of instrument with a longer chain, with a longer timing, because to provide a bank credit, you need a longer procedure. And the company profile, the actually address is a different one. We're talking about larger companies. So apart from the integration and the coordination under the direction of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there is a substantial difference. Our paths do not cross that much. Our paths cross a little bit more with CMIST, but we have to close. I'm very sorry. Anyhow, I know that you are here, you have your own booth in this hall. Can you give us all the relevant data? Booth 700. So hall 7, sorry, number 900. So you can go there and get all the information that you need. Yes, whichever extra information you may need, please refer to our booth. I'm sorry, but there are so many things that I cannot communicate right now because of time reasons, but please visit us in our booth or write to us. Sure. To conclude, I would like to give a suggestion. My suggestion is, please, learn about these tools as early as you can, because when you need them, it might be already too late. I mean, such also provides you with an insurance of foreign credit. But of course, like with all insurances, it is not that you obtain an insurance, subscribe an insurance policy after you've had a car accident. You have to do that before. So when you don't manage to get your credit back, if you did not get an insurance policy with SACE, that would be too late. So when you do not have problems, start understanding what SACE can do for you. This is very, very wise. Yes. Because otherwise it might be too late when you need that. I mean, they can't work out miracles. And since they're here, they have a booth here, why not passing by their booth? Hall 7, booth 900. Or gioielleria@ice.it. So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to our speakers. And enjoy your fair.